A young blonde reporter lies on the ICU bed counting her last breath as she reminisces her entire life from childhood to adulthood, wondering if she lived her life to the fullest. The movie begins with a flashback scene where we go through the life events of Lainey Kerrigan from her childhood to the adolescent phase. Throughout her life, we see that Lainey is often overlooked by others, causing her to live a relatively sad life. The scene cuts forward to Lainey in her life, where she's a successful reporter at a Seattle television channel called Seattle Life. Lainey lives with her boyfriend, Cal Copper, who is a famous baseball player. One day, after she finishes reporting a baseball game at the channel headquarters, Lainey's boss offers her to apply for a lucrative position at a reputed news channel. She's flattered to hear the offer and goes along with it. However, there's one problem. She doesn't really get along with Pete, the cameraman, with whom she's supposed to work. The next day, while at work, Pete changes the tone of the mic, causing Lainey's voice to be heard at a really high pitch, which angers her. However, Lainey's boss urges her to work with Pete as he's supposedly the best in the business. Later that night, while having dinner with her colleague Andrea, Lainey boasts how her life right now is perfect, as she has everything she ever wished for, including the recent job opportunity. In the next scene, we see a man named Jack, who is a self-proclaimed prophet. Amidst the crowd, Jack announces a series of accidents that will supposedly take place in the near future. Moments later, Lainey and Pete, along with the other crew members of their channel, arrive at the scene to interview Jack. Before the interview, Lainey asks Jack to predict whether she will get the job or not. Jack has a stiff look on his face as he outright replies that she won't get the job. Soon the interview begins, and Lainey starts her interview with Jack to find out if he really can predict football scores. However, Prophet Jack not only predicts the football score, but also that it will hail the next day, and that Lainey will die in 7 days on the following Thursday. Upon hearing this, Lainey immediately walks off the scene, thinking it's one of Pete's pranks on her. Life or Something Like It is a 2004 romantic comedy film where Lainey Kerrigan, a successful reporter, interviews a self-proclaimed prophet to find out if he really can predict football scores. Prophet Jack not only predicts the football score and that it will hail the next day, but also that Lainey will die in 7 days on the following Thursday. Returning back to the story, that night, the whole news channel crew witnessed the end score of the football game, exactly what Jack had predicted earlier that day. At midnight, Lainey wakes up to see that it's hailing outside, just as Jack had predicted. When his first two prophecies come true, Lainey panics and goes to see her doctor and get herself tested. However, the doctor successfully diagnoses her as one of the healthiest people she has ever met. Later, even Pete tries to advise Lainey not to put much thought into Jack's predictions, as he's just another homeless guy. Next, Lainey and her sister Gwen go to meet their retired old father on his birthday. She tells him about her new job opportunity, but her father doesn't seem interested. So Lainey goes out and smokes a cigarette out of frustration. Late that night, she calls her boyfriend Cal, who seems a bit irritated at Lainey for calling so late. Finally, she can't help herself and goes out to meet with Jack once again to ask for another prophecy in hopes of calming her nerves. Upon meeting Jack, Lainey pays him to make another prediction so that she can prove him wrong. Jack looks up in the sky and tells her that there will be a relatively significant earthquake in San Francisco at 9:06 a.m. The next day, Lainey can't focus on her gym routine as her mind is still on Jack and his predictions. As the clock strikes exactly 9 hours and 6 minutes, Lainey turns on the TV, hoping there would be no news of any earthquakes. At first, she becomes joyful after not finding anything remotely related to an earthquake on screen. However, her happiness is soon converted into disparity as she learns of an earthquake in San Francisco that went exactly at the time Jack had predicted the last day. As a result, Lainey is now convinced that she's going to die and is forced to reevaluate her entire life. She spends the rest of her day looking at her childhood photographs. Her lifelong ambition of appearing on network television begins to look like a distant dream. Having no other options left, she ends up finding comfort in an unlikely source, Pete, and goes to meet him. Pete tries to relax Lainey and tells her to calm down. Soon they begin talking about their past relationship, which Lainey thinks was a big mistake. Still, Pete cares for Lainey and tries to motivate her. He introduces her to a new approach to life, to live every moment of her life to the fullest and to do whatever she had always wanted to do. However, Lainey soon storms out of Pete's house and goes to meet her sister Gwen. She starts asking some philosophical questions about life and its meaning to Gwen, which makes her uncomfortable. During their conversation, Gwen reveals that her husband is a sex addict, which amuses Lainey and she starts laughing. Gwen is pissed off and mocks Lainey for living a seemingly perfect life ever since they were kids. The siblings' conversation eventually ends on a slightly rough note as Lainey leaves the place. Next, we see Cal arriving back at Lainey's apartment after a week. He notices that the apartment is messed up and hears loud music, which is unlike Lainey's style. Cal is surprised to see Lainey in such a state and asks the reasons for this. Amidst their conversation, she starts asking vague questions to Cal about their relationship, but Cal doesn't seem to be interested in this conversation and says it's giving him a headache that disappoints Lainey. To fix Lainey's mood, Cal takes her to a huge empty stadium at night where they start playing baseball, but Lainey quickly becomes disinterested in the sport and eventually starts to break down. That night, Lainey breaks up with Cal in frustration. Later, we see her in a bar getting drunk. The next day, the news channel reports about a strike led by transit workers. Like other channels, the channel that Lainey works in is also on the spot reporting the incident. Pete and the other crew members are there waiting for Lainey, but she's nowhere to be found. As a result, the channel decides to send Andrea instead. But Lainey soon arrives there wearing a rather unprofessional outfit and in a drunken state. While in her drunken state, Lainey interviews the transit driver and soon gets them to start singing along with the whole nearby crowd and the policemen. The next day, Lainey wakes up to find herself in Pete's house. She learns about her interview in the drunken state a day earlier, which surprises her. She cannot believe she went on air without makeup and rehearsed lines. Lainey requests Pete to let her stay in his house, so she moves in with Pete for a day. That day, Lainey and Pete spend their day together, which allows them to get to know each other even better. While in a shop, Pete reveals that he has a son named Tommy who lives with his mother. Later, they go to pick up Tommy from school, and Pete introduces Lainey to his son. They spend a whole day together with Tommy, going through a bunch of carnival rides and traveling around the city. After dropping Tommy at his mother's house, Pete and Lainey talk for a while in his car. Lainey reveals that she hasn't felt this good in such a long time, and that she hasn't thought about Prophet Jack all day. Later, they drive off to his house, and the two of them sleep together for the second time. The next day, Lainey arrives at her office expecting to be fired from the channel. However, as she enters the office, she's welcomed with a surprise. As it turns out, Lainey indeed received the opportunity for a job she always dreamed of in New York. She becomes very happy and meets Pete in the storeroom. She asks Pete to come with her, but he declines, telling her that her appetite for success and fame will never end. After Pete rejects her offer, Lainey sadly leaves for New York. On the way, she stops to meet her father one last time. When her father asks when she'll return, Lainey jokes that he won't miss her because Gwen has always been her favorite daughter. However, her father asks her to open the top drawer, in which Lainey finds all her childhood moments and interviews taped by him. As a result, Lainey realizes that her parents always loved her, even though she felt like they never did. The next day, an angry Pete meets Jack and tells him how wrong he is, as Lainey got the job that Jack foretold she would get. However, Jack explains that he was right, as Lainey will never be able to get the job because she'll die before it begins. He also gives the prophecy of the death of a famous former baseball player in a plane crash. The next day, we see Pete at a local bar playing pool with his friend. He discusses his complicated relationship with Lainey with his friend. Meanwhile, Lainey is on the plane to New York discussing Jack's prophecy with one of the passengers on the plane. At the same time, the plane is hit by a strong turbulence due to an ongoing storm, which scares the passenger sitting next to Lainey. On the other hand, Pete receives the news of the death of the baseball player as foretold by Jack. He quickly realizes that Jack was telling the truth, and his prophecies do come true. Pete quickly calls Lainey to warn her, but cannot reach her. Having no other options left, Pete quickly rushes to the airport and boards the last flight to New York. The next day, we see Lainey on her way to interview the famous media personality Deborah Connors. On the way, she's almost met with an accident when she urges the driver to drive faster. However, she is completely unconcerned with Jack's prophecy and doesn't really care if anything happens to her. After a while, Lainey is left in awe after arriving at the huge set of the studio where she is supposed to interview Deborah. Lainey is given an already prepared list of questions that she's supposed to ask during the interview, but Lainey says she has prepared her own list of questions. However, she's told that Deborah doesn't answer questions that she doesn't already know. As the preparation for the interview goes on, Lainey finally gets to meet Deborah, who seems a little cocky about her fame. Meanwhile, we see Pete finally arriving in New York and making his way toward the studio to warn Lainey. Soon the interview begins, and Lainey stumbles while speaking to her. She soon realizes how petty the opening questions are and shares a heartfelt moment with Deborah live on air. To her surprise, the interview goes on to receive huge ratings. The network immediately offers her a position, but Lainey instantly declines, realizing that she wants a life with Pete in Seattle. As she leaves the studio, a police officer gets into a conflict with a man who shoots a bullet into the air. Pete, who finally arrived outside the studio, tries to warn Lainey from across the street, but she's shot in the crossfire. Next, Lainey is rushed to the ICU for her wounds. We see that Lainey dies in the operating theater, but is revived later. When she wakes up, Pete tells her that he has loved her since the first time he saw her, and Lainey tells him that she loves him too. In the last scene of the movie, Pete, Lainey, and Tommy watch Cal's baseball game. In a voiceover, Lainey says that one part of her has died, the part that didn't know how to live a life. That was it for today, guys. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. If you fancy more recaps, check out this video now.